Hello, this is OverlordBou, and we're back with another video. Today, we're going to be talking about the Napoli. So, the Napoli is a recent Tier 10 release for 252,000 coal or 30,000 doubloons, and I'll let SAT score start us off.
252,000 coal or 34,950 doubloons. So Napoli is a highly anticipated tier 10 Italian cruiser. From what I've seen, a lot of people were looking forward to the release of her. So in this video, we'll just go over our Bo's experiences and see how well she stacks up. So to give you some basic info, she uses a very similar hull to the Venezia. However, she has a lot of different stats to make her play very differently. So, Bo, do you want to go over her main gimmick in this case?
So her main gimmick for the Napoli is the fact that she does have SAP secondaries. That's pretty much the main gimmick of the vessel. Is the fact that it has SAP for its secondaries. It goes, you can get up to 9.2, which you can see in this video here. I have it up to 9.2 secondary range on the Napoli. Now, the secondaries are pretty memey with their long distance, but I don't find them to be super accurate on DDs, which is kind of the issue. Because, like, hey, you got this really cool gimmick, but at the same time, it doesn't really work out too well.
How's the range on her secondaries?
Well, the range on them are 9.2, so I consider them to be pretty long range for a cruiser. But since it is a cruiser, you're not able to build into them properly. Like, you can't build them as like a BB you can. You only have cruiser skills, and none of the cruiser skills buff secondaries.
Hmm. Well, then let's go talk about her guns then.
So her guns are 9 252 millimeter high velocity guns. Her base range is 16.9 kilometers. No, it's 16 kilometers, and they go up to 18.9 when you do a range mod into the 6th slot. Now, with these high velocity guns with 252s, they have a very high tendency of overpenning their targets. So you find that a lot of cruisers, you're overpenning them a lot instead of actually penning them and doing citadel damage. You're doing a lot of overpens, kind of like how the Roma suffers the same thing.
And from what I'm looking at, the HE DPM to Napoli is about 110k with 42 HE penetration. So it looks like, at least on paper, Napoli's HE DPM is among the worst of tier 10s.
Yeah, isn't it compared to like a tier 8 cruiser
Uh,
DPM for HE?
Yeah. I've noticed that a fair amount of Tier 8 cruisers will actually out DPM the Napoli. Cheshire, for example, has one of the lower DPMs, and she has 50 millimeter pen and about 110-ish HE DPM for a Tier 8 cruiser.
Yeah, that doesn't seem very good at all. Seems pretty low considering a tier 10.
Alright. So, alright, so that's for her guns. Seems that her main battery might be lacking, but her secondaries, well, secondary sounds like a mixed bag. So let's go see what else she has. So let's go talk about the armor scheme. So how do you think the Napoli held up when under fire? Were you
When
dying quickly, or was the ship very tanky?
Well, I played a total of around 35 games of the Napoli during my testing of trying to figure if I like it or not. And of course, this is after the release, of course. So, on my time of testing it, I found that the ship is very tanky and maneuverable. And also, if you build into concealment, it goes to 10.3. So, the ship is pretty much a very buff Fenzia with around the same maneuverability as a Fenzia and a better concealment than the Fenzia, but it it has the main guns are worse off because there's no sap. There's only AP and HE.
Hmm. But how often were you citadel in that ship?
I was citadeled very few times in the ship, even when I had multiple battleships shooting at me. I wasn't citadeled that much at all. You'd have to be
Okay.
completely broadside and close usually to get set, unless they're doing a diving down shot into your citadel, because this ship does have a turtle back, so it is pretty hard to citadel it.
Alright. So it sounds like Napoli is pretty good defensively. And we're not even talking about the smoke generator, which gives her additional survivability.
Yes.
Alright. So what about the torpedoes here? It looks like you're in a strait and you're thinking about firing torps.
Yes, so the torpedoes are pretty low damage. They're around 13.6k damage for the torpedoes. They don't really do that much damage, sadly. So the torpedoes are pretty disappointing. The one main benefit of the torpedoes is that they are 10 kilometers, and they also have this has a very, very, very strong torpedo angles on this vessel. Really, really strong torpedoes. So you can launch them pretty far forward and pretty far back. So it's very good for if you're trying to rush into somebody or kiting. They can both be really effective.
Mm-hmm. They seem to be very similar, if not the same torpedoes found on other Italian cruisers. So they have, I believe, 13.5-kilometer range, and they're very hard to detect.
Oh no, they're 10 kilometers.
I see here 13.5.
No, they're 10.
Interesting.
Yeah, they're 10 kilometers. I don't know. That's really weird, but no, they are 10-kilometer range.
Alright. Otherwise, they're the same Italian torpedoes. About 14k alpha damage, fairly low damage, but very stealthy. Since you're under attack by by aircraft, let's go talk about Napoli's AA then.
The Napoli's AA isn't very strong. The only strong suit it kind of has is the fighter, which you can't change for anything else. But the thing is that the Napoli does have a lot of deck armor, and the superstructure isn't supremely massive on it, so it doesn't take too much rocket damage. And since the citadel is really small on this particular vessel, it's hard for bombers to be able to citadel the Napoli.
And this is also where smoke comes in. Like the Venezia, you can also just use smoke whenever you're under attack by CVs. So that will give you about 50 seconds of smoke duration, which is enough to throw off almost everyone of the average player's aim.
Yep, exactly.
And okay. So since we're maneuvering here, how is the Napoli's maneuverability?
I would put the Napoli's maneuverability about the same as a Fenzia. The Fenzia and the ship feel pretty almost identical in how they maneuver around. It's just the Napoli has a better concealment than the Fenzia.
So when I look at the Venezia, the turning circle radius is okay. So the speed is slightly in Venezia's favor, 36.6 knots versus 35.5. And then when you take a look at the turning circle, it's 750 versus 760. So again, pretty much the same. The rudder shift time, Venezia is a bit worse, at 13 seconds versus 12 seconds for Napoli. So overall, Napoli handles very similarly to the Venezia, but is slightly better in those categories.
Yep.
And it sounds like it's translated very well, because most of the cruisers at tier 10 generally have fairly poor handling. So it's a nice change of pace when you have a cruiser that's both stealthy and maneuvers quite well. So so finally, one of the most important parts about the ship is her concealment. Here for Napoli, you can, her base concealment's about 12.8, but you can lower that down to about 10.3. How good is it in practice?
So when you're in smoke, the firing range when you're detected when you're firing in smoke is 8.7, which is really, really, really good. And since this is a engine smoke, which means you can go as fast as you want and you won't be spotted, so it's really good with that. And also at the same time, the 10.3 means you can also be really stealthy when you're trying to sneak up on enemies. So I find it really, really effective with that as well. But at the same time, though, I kind of feel like this ship is, like, it's either two choices, right? You're either going to go the Mimi, rushing in, yellowing kind of strategy, or you're going to be using the more kiting strategy. So I feel more like usually most people would kind of pick the Mimi yellowing, so it'd definitely be fun for them to just use the yellowing for smoke. The smoke would be fun for yellowing.
Mm-hmm. So here, right now, you're trying to tear Midway apart with your secondaries. Um, so what do you think the secondary's effectiveness in these kind of scenarios?
When it's this close, it's not going to do too much because it's just going to hit the belt. But when you get a little bit further away, it will definitely do better. But this close, the secondaries are too accurate, and they're only going to hit the belt of the ships. Like, if it's a DD, then sure, it will melt it. But a cruiser or a battleship or a CV that has too much belt armor, it's not going to be effective at all.
Yep, this is due to how the secondaries target. So the secondaries will target will target the water line at the middle of the ship. This is a problem sometimes because if the ship has a belt, like if you're a cruiser or a battleship, then all your secondaries are going to shatter. This is also a common problem with HE firing secondaries, so it's not exclusive to Napoli.
Yep.
And I think we've already done a good job talking about our consumables. We talked about damage control. Damage control party is pretty normal. The smoke generator, how useful has it been for you?
I find the smoke generator to be very, very, very useful. Your ability to be able to smoke up anytime you want, and then the awesome concealment as well from it is amazing. I find it really, 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 really useful. Very well done.
All right.
Very, very good for that.
So to summarize what we've said so far, the main battery seems pretty iffy in both HE output and AP damage. The defense seems to be pretty good and is considered one of our strong points. Very difficult to be citadeled, you have access to a smoke, and you're just expected to survive for most, if not all, of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Torpedoes, pretty standard for Italian torpedoes. AA, nothing to write home about. Concealment, pretty good for a cruiser, really only bested by a handful of select ships.
Yep.
And maneuverability, a little bit better than Venezia, which is considered very good. And then finally, her gimmick, secondaries, they have their moments, but there's a lot of inherent flaws with them that might make it less effective than expected.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we put all these things together, what is your overall opinion of the Napoli?
So I think the Napoli is more of a meme ship, more like a co-op or meme for fun and randoms. I don't think this ship is going to be anywhere like as a competitive ship or a good ship for randoms, clan battles, or ranked. It's going to be more just meme fun and randoms with friends, or memeing in co-op, or it's a good secondary ship for co-op as well. So I'll definitely consider that as for there as well, definitely. So I think it's more of a random ship, like as a meme random, and as in a co-op meme. Nothing really serious for ranked or clan battles.
Hmm. So, given how Napoli is obtained, whether by coal or by doubloons, would you recommend people buy her?
No, I would not recommend people buy this ship. No, I would not recommend it. It's probably on my
Right.
low list of ships I'd recommend for coal. So if you want a meme secondary ship, then I would recommend getting the Palmer first, then this one, if you're trying to get secondary ships. But at the same time, I wouldn't highly recommend this ship to get it for competitive or ranked.
Right. That is all the questions I have then.
But yep, thank you so much for your time at SAT score. If you guys have any questions, concerns, definitely down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much again, and I'll talk to y'all later.